Dude, I am so excited to have you on. Thanks for being with us. I've checked out all your stuff, and I can't believe there's like another me out there. I mean, when I look at the stuff that you're doing, I had no idea anybody else was even in the same realm in terms of gamifying your life. That's what I've dedicated my life to. I've been building this app for the last couple of years, hoping to launch it pretty soon. I'm sure we'll talk and get into that. I'm curious to get your feedback on the concept and whatnot. But yeah, man. So tell me about you and how you got to this place. And sorry, I started talking about my wife because she was on, but 10,000 foot view. I know that you have had a lot of success, and you came up with this concept at some point, and you're kind of essentially doing what I'm doing, which is showing the world, hey, there's a way to kind of trick your brain into using those dopamine hits and all these things that we naturally want to do into actually. And it's funny you use the word level up, because I use that all over the place. It's all over all my stuff. It's all over my website. But level up your life, right? Just like you do in a video game. But when you're leveling up with your stuff, just like with my stuff, it sounds like you're also leveling up in real life. Is that right?
Yep. No, totally. Yeah. So I can give kind of the 10,000, 30,000 foot view here. So my name is Eric Siu, and thanks for having me, Will. Yeah, I mean, at the highest level, I mean, right now I'm just really focused on, building or buying other businesses. Business is very much my game right now. And the whole concept behind Leveling Up, the book that came out earlier this year, is really how I see life. So even, I've been playing games since I was like, I don't know, 5 to 22 years old or so. And now, pre-COVID, we play Smash Brothers together in the office, but, now we're remote first. So I can't really play any other games because business is just so fun, because you can keep jumping around, like doing lives like this, or doing podcasts, or, buying another business or whatever. It's all just fun to me every day. And it's just easier when you look at things as a game. And there's just little puzzles that you need to solve. So that's what it is at the highest level.
Total. I love that. And right. And that's right. It's funny. I'm in the process of redoing my website. I was checking out your website, and, I mean, there's going to be a lot of crossover that I'd already had been I'm really focusing on the new version on the gamification aspect, and just talking about similar things to what you just said, such as, just figuring out how to kind of look at life as a video game. And everybody loves video games. Not everybody, but, everybody does like at least aspects of the gamification process, we'll say. Or gamifying things, the whole social connectivity, the rewards, the competition, technology, these types of things, like, at some level it resonates with people. And it's why, Facebook and Instagram and Google are where they are, because they've used that same science and technology to, leverage their brand and what they're doing. And, I'm sure you've seen that show or the documentary, The Social Dilemma. Have you seen that on Netflix?
Yep.
So it's interesting to see how, and one of the things resonated with me in terms of like the world's gaining a lot of knowledge, but our wisdom isn't keeping pace. And, just like the late great Stan Lee once said, with great power, there must come great responsibility. So all these companies are have used the science and technology, which is insane how much we've been able to gain and create, but they're using it for their own personal gain, right? They're using it to make money. And I don't even think these guys are bad guys, like Larry Page, Mark Zuckerberg. They just went out to start a business like anybody else, but we're in this system right now where if you're a capitalist system and you go and start a business, then all of a sudden now you're public, you've got a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders, and you have to make money, and the happiness and wellness of your user is nowhere in that equation. And so I know I personally am trying to use that same concept and sort of say, okay, how can we use these things to help people versus hurt people? And it seems like, you're on that exact same page as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm +1 to that. I don't know what else I would add to that.
So, I mean, where did you come up with, this concept? I mean, give us a little bit more backstory, pun intended, on your character, on your avatar. Like how did your player get to this level? And then I want to hear, what's the next level, and what's the goal that you're trying to get to?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about just leveling up as an organization. So, when people join the company, they can join different companies within. So there's a software company, there's the events business, education agency, right? So there's different businesses in there, but the whole entire framework of leveling up, it's a game that never ends. And so, my personal mission, which I'll never ever accomplish, is to level up the world. But that's such a broad thing that I can just continue to work on that and be excited to work on it every day. And that's what a mission is. And so I don't want it to ever end. And that's, it's the game that never ends, right? I was actually talking to someone earlier this week, and then he said, he doesn't really play games because life in itself is a game, and that's the way to look at it. And so for me, I've also, one thing I'll add on that a really helpful book for everyone is called The Billionaire Who Wasn't, and it's about this guy named Chuck Feeney, and he founded all the duty-free stores that you see at the airports, and he's given away $8 billion to date, and he lives in a small apartment now in San Francisco. And so I think that's a game that's worth playing. So will I give away $8 billion? I don't know. But, I want to get as close to that as I can because it's fun, right? So anyway, there's just a couple of things that are in there, but largely, it's like even the entire organization itself, we tell people like, hey, like we want you to be the best version of yourself. And we openly tell people they should have side hustles as long as they're not competitive, because there's really only one person you can rely on in the world, and it's yourself. And so you got to keep leveling yourself up.
I love it. So, I'd like to get a little bit more, get into you and, your kind of how you got here in terms of, obviously you've had some success, but kind of, why don't you take us on that journey from you're a kid, were you born in the US? Were you, were both your parents together? I've got a crazy backstory. I'm sure everybody's got an interesting one. I'd love to hear kind of, maybe in a couple minutes, take us on that journey of how, you came into this world naked, afraid, and, you've obviously figured some stuff out in terms of how the world works in the universe and principles and these types of things. And you're trying to use those for good versus evil, as I said, which I commend you for. Take us on that journey a little bit and how you got here.
Yeah, totally. One thing that's interesting, I think that might be helpful, practical, is, people might look at therapy and coaching as something that is like, oh, they don't need that. And I can say through my coach alone in the last 12 months, I've had like 7 breakthrough moments. And most of those breakthrough moments have to do with my childhood. And so I don't think many people realize that, right? It's grew up in LA, so born and raised in LA, lived there most of my life until I moved to Miami recently. But look, was the only child from 2 immigrant parents. One was Taiwanese, the other one was Cantonese, so technically Chinese, but we don't really call ourselves that. I don't know how that all works. Typically, when you have Asian parents, they're very hard driving, and nothing's ever good enough, right? And you kind of get some PTSD from that because, nothing's ever good enough, and so you're constantly trying. You have a chip on your shoulder. You're constantly trying to prove yourself, and you feel like you're not good enough because of that. And the other thing too is, because I played a lot of games, maybe I wasn't as socially accepted in the beginning. The good thing is that games actually started to become popular as I got into high school. So I weaseled my way into like the quote unquote popular groups. But, I knew that I needed to be a part of like good teams, right? Good groups and all that. And I'd always barely make it into things, barely made it into drumline, barely made it into these groups, barely scraped by, barely graduated high school, barely graduated college, got fired from 2 jobs. So I was really the ultimate failure growing up and really didn't have much confidence because the only thing I was good at was games, and nobody was telling me that, hey, like this is actually acceptable, and like this, what you're learning right now actually applies to real life, like how you communicate with people, the camaraderie that you build, being a part of great teams, right? That's basically business, putting together great teams, great cultures. And so you learn all that, and you start to realize that, oh, whoa, how people look at sports is basically how games are. It's the same type of benefit, right? You overtrain in sports, you might tear your ACL. You overtrain in games, you might eat too much food and become overweight or whatever, right? And so, I've learned everything I've learned from games, I've been able to apply to business largely, and it's been very beneficial. And so I just want to be able to paint that lens or give that hope to the other 3 billion people in the world that have played a game, because when you start to look at it that way, and you start to look at it as things as like an infinite game where you're just trying to get a little bit better every single day, then it's just fun when you do that. You think about when you go to school, it's not interesting because all they do is lecture, a monologue. Like I'm becoming a monologue right now, which I'm going to pause for a second. But you want things to be engaging, and games allow you to do that.
Well, I think you hit something on the head, and I mean, I didn't think you're monologuing, but I want to point out something which is exactly what I've been preaching, and one of the reasons I'm so big on this path to helping people as well is, we are, just like I was saying earlier with Stan Lee, with great power comes great responsibility. We are like exploding in terms of technology and what we're able to do as a society and what we've been able to create. Our wisdom, though, like the good part of us hasn't quite stopped and paused, just like you did, and said, okay, well, hold on now. How can we use this to help the planet, to help the world? Like you use the term, I think you want to help level up the world. My mission is help others become the best version of themselves to, in turn, help the world become the best version of itself. Same thing, right? So it's like helping people to realize, and yeah, it's great to get one at a time, but it needs to become like a movement, and it needs to be something where it can resonate. And we're in this generation where our attention span is becoming smaller and smaller because there's more and more stuff coming at us in every direction, right? I mean, just watching TV nowadays. I mean, it used to be they didn't have radio came out, and it was like, oh my God, radio, and the family would sit by the radio for an hour and listen to the show. Then TV came out, right? And then now it's like we've got our iPad open, we've got our laptop, we've got our cell phone, we've got Netflix, we've got Amazon Prime, we've got Hulu. Like there's just so then you get your social media and TikTok and all those videos. Have you noticed like the really popular stuff right now? It's all getting shorter and shorter, right? So like TikTok is like exploded. And then what did Instagram do? Facebook? They copied that with Instagram Reels. And now those are the most popular thing on Instagram right now. It's like these little 5 to 15 second clips where you're grabbing somebody's attention and they're getting that little dopamine hit that they're after. And then they're on to the next, right? Because people are having a harder and harder time reading books, right? Like being able to sit there and listen to people like us for a long period of time. They want that quick, like, give me that dopamine hit. How can I help? And so to me, I don't know if you feel the same way, using gamification kind of helps to marry the two.
Yeah. I mean, it's, how do you gamify things to keep people engaged and keep them interested at the end of the day? Again, that's why school lectures are just not that interesting. But to your point, I mean, that's the other challenge too. How do you hold people's attention, right? So there's games within the game at the end of the day. But yeah, totally agree.
So, okay, so and then as far as you said you had a bunch of failures growing up, or you're always what did you say? I think you're always on the verge of, not quite making, you just would squeak by. My childhood, similar kind of story where I had a tough childhood. I was suicidal by the age of college, and just could not figure it out. And I serendipitously had a moment where one of these professors, I threw myself into studies because I didn't have anything else, and video games, by the way, which I talk about. Games were like more my salvation. So looks like I'm probably a bit older than you. Games weren't as cool as they are now. They didn't have like these leagues where kids can go out and make millions of dollars playing video games. And so, yeah, I mean, some people would play, but I would just kind of use that to like escape from the real world, the video games, right? And I would, and I met this professor, and I had my studies and my video games. That's all I was really had in college. And he kind of introduced me to this other side, which was these universal principles, by introducing me to this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I read it, and I was like, oh my God, there's like a different way to look at life, right? Yep. I've read it probably 20 times. It's one of my faves, written all the way back in the 30s, but yet it's got these universal principles in it that have been around since the beginning of time, or since man anyways, and it'll be around till we destroy ourselves. So it's like, why aren't we using these on a regular basis? Why isn't school focusing on this type of stuff? It's like, okay, yeah, algebra, geometry, trig 3. What about how to handle manage your emotions? What about how to successfully have relationships with people, where one of the main concepts from the book, if I could sum that book up, How to Win Friends and Influence People, in one sentence would be, just make the other person feel special and important, and you will never have any problems, right? And like, that's the type of stuff where it's a crapshoot to learn these types of things. You know, maybe your parents teach you. If you had good parents that had good morals and values, maybe you happen to catch it in school from a teacher that's kind of going off book, but it's not like the mainstream, like teaching these types of principles and stuff to kids. And to me, that's one of the biggest problems in our system. You got to start them young, right? Because then those habits develop over time. And then before you know it.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, people have to kind of discover these things, such as, how do you take care of yourself financially? How do you build relationships with people? These are all kind of long-term things that they don't teach in school. But I think we're slowly evolving. Like, you see a lot of these new schools popping up. There's actually a school here in Miami called Synthesis School, and they're all about gamifying school, right? So I think slowly we're edging towards making a better school system, but I think we still have a long way to go. So, yeah.
Well, that's part of my mission. Sounds like it's part of yours. So yeah, I mean, I definitely would want to continue our conversations too. Sounds like, you know, it's not, like I said, it's kind of like having a twin and not knowing your whole life. And then all of a sudden being like, oh my God, I have a twin. There's somebody else out there that's like me, that sees the world through similar eyes. So when I had you put in front of me as somebody for the show, I mean, we're very, not that we're like this high-end show, because we're not, so don't even let me try to. But we have to say no all the time, bottom line, to lots of people. But when your name came across and I saw what you're doing, I was like, awesome. So, okay, so you get through school, and for me, just kind of going back to our comparisons, I ended up focusing on the making money aspect of life, which I learned many years later, as I'm sure you probably have, that that's not what life is about. That's not what happiness is about. It's about these other things. I call them the 5 cores. What journey did you go on after high school? Did you become like, were you like, I'm going to make all this money? And then part of it was like a revenge story for me. It was like, I'm going to make all these people feel bad that they were ever mean to me, and that they treated me like shit, and that they didn't believe in me, and I'm going to show them. And that was a big part for me. How did it go for you?
I mean, I love that chip on shoulder type of thing, because it's motivating, right? And then I think you learn that whenever someone's saying something negative about you, you kind of just turn it into fuel. And so I've learned to enjoy that in some sick way. I'm sure you have too. But yeah, I mean, yeah, for the longest time, it's just I wanted to, prove people wrong and show them the giant middle finger. And, it's good motivation for a while, but then you kind of evolve beyond that.
Ego is one of the best. I mean, it's our ego, right? Ego is one of the best motivating factors on the planet. And if people just can know that and use that to their advantage, yeah. But like we're talking now, we're looking back in retrospect, but at the time you don't think about that. You're just like, you have this fire in your belly, but we all need that. And it's like, whatever you can take to get there, you might as well use it.
I love it. I mean, even now, like, even a couple of years ago, I remember people would say, Eric, that guy had nothing going for him, and look at him now, as if I got lucky, which I do think, there's luck is a big piece of it. Luck is a big piece of it for sure, but you kind of create your own luck. So.
Yeah, I love that. I can't tell you how many. I think that is the default setting for every human being, is to look at another successful person and go, man, they're lucky, right? Yep. Because why is that? It's the victim in us that goes, well, they couldn't have gone out and earned it and done all this stuff that I, because then it makes you feel bad, right? So you go, oh, well, they just got lucky, and it makes you feel better and warm and squishy inside, like, oh, I don't need to go out and work and do anything. But as anybody that's ever had success, and I put that in quotes because our definition in this world of success is totally skewed towards money and power and fame, in my opinion, but real success, which is the relationships and the mindset and the physical health, the emotional health, like all these things that to me actually make a person happy. Career and finances is in that equation, but it's not all about that, right? Mm-hmm. And so, okay, totally. So yeah, I mean, so I don't want to go too much on that, but back to, so then what kind of business did you get into? Did you start your own companies? Did you go out? Like, what was your path?
Actually, I mean, this might be helpful for everyone in general, because I started down the traditional path. I started working for companies. I had a dead-end job coming out of college, doing data entry. A friend told me about this digital marketing thing. And I after I learned that, changed jobs within the first 5 years. And then in that first year, I actually bought one of my peers. He sold me an e-commerce website that sold magic tricks. And so I got into, I'm air quoting right now, mergers and acquisitions before I even knew that was a thing. And I started buying some websites. Those sites all tanked because, there's some lessons within there. But within a couple of years, I was leading marketing at an online education startup, and then I was tapped to come help this failing agency called Single Grain. And long story short on that one, I was able to acquire the company for $2 out of pocket. It was a failing company. The 4 other partners bounced out. And even my podcast co-host, who was a partner, Neil Patel, he said, hey, there's no brand equity. There's nothing here. You should get out as a friend. You should go work somewhere else. So I'm going to kind of leave it at this, but I decided to make a bet on Single Grain because I thought there was asymmetric upside, meaning that if you're going to make a bet, my upside was if I won, it's unlimited. But if I lost, my downside was so limited as well that it was almost like I was getting a free MBA. So heads I win, tails I also win.
Well, and that goes to, you kind of gamified it, right? You sort of figured out a way to beat the system by either way you were going to win. And that's not something that's our default setting. You had to sort of kind of think that through and figure that out, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to, or a lot of times, you have to zig where other people are zagging. So, I don't know. That's why you see a lot of people earlier this year, the earlier ones that got into NFTs earlier, whatever. And now everyone's trying to get rich quick off of it, but they got in early and they made a lot of money, right? It's they were zigging where other people were zagging.
Right, which reminds me of a famous quote. I think it was Warren Buffett. When there's blood in the streets, is when you wanna go in. Meaning, kind of don't follow the herd. The herd will take you in the wrong direction. And that applies to all levels of life, not just finance. You need to be your own person and stay strong and believe in what it is that you want to do and go against the grain sometimes. If it makes sense, don't do it just to do it. But it's that whole just not giving up and having that, like, I know that I'm doing the right thing deep down inside. And it's not, things don't happen overnight. Just like we were talking about a couple minutes ago, like people like to just go, oh, look, that person's got all this money and a podcast, and oh man, they're so lucky. It's like, no, it was a 25-year journey, actually. And It was real painful in a lot of places. And I failed a shit ton, as I'm sure you did. Failure's mandatory, right? It's not optional, it's mandatory. And if you can learn to embrace it, meaning you're not going to jump up and down when you fail and be like, woohoo, that was awesome. But kind of go, okay, that sucked. What did I learn? How can I pivot and move forward in this game of life and keep, continuing leveling up? Is the key.
I think it's constant reframes too. Like I put up something yesterday, but when you think about Walt Disney, he failed 230 times, and you think about Eminem, he failed 6 times. Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, he failed 30 times, and then the guy that created was that Squid Game. He was trying to pitch that for 10 years. And so that's what it takes sometimes.
Oh, I love that little juicy nugget. I just finished that last night. Just absolutely devoured that show. Have you watched the whole thing?
I've watched a couple, but not the whole thing yet. Yeah.
Oh my God. It is so good. Yeah, they nailed it. They nailed it. Like the way that the director, the writing, the acting, like the way they put that whole thing together. It's no wonder it's been #1 on Netflix for like the last couple.
It's going to be their #1 all time. That's what they're predicting. Yeah.
I was going to say, you never see that. Usually if you go to Netflix, it's like changes not only day to day, but like in the same day you have a different #1. It seems like, so that's good to know. And that's such a great point, right? Edison, right? I mean, I think he failed like hundreds of times before he came up with the
over
light bulb that actually were over 1,000. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for correcting me. So that's it, man. But you got to here's the key, okay, that I think people miss. So you and I talking about this, we both know that that's what it takes. And we've both been there, and we've both been through the goods, the bads, and just kept going, right? Until we got to that, the next level or next stage. And then we just got to there and we're like, maybe we took like a brief rest, but then it was like, okay, what's the next one, right? To do that, though, you have to have, I think Napoleon Hill called it a desire backed by faith, but it's something inside you where kind of I started this conversation. My wife, she was working in the Chicago public school system. She's happy, satisfied with her job, but there's something in her that was like, I'm not utilizing the gifts that are inside me. I have this passion for physical therapy, and I love, she loves working out. She's like a workoutaholic. And so she's now combined them and on this side hustle, and she created this business. Was it easy? No, we have 2 kids. She's been working like late at night when she normally goes to bed at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. And she's like staying up till 11. She's building her website. She's doing all these things because she has that desire backed by faith, or that overwhelming fire inside her that's like, I know that this is what I want to do and that I'll be good at it and nothing's going to stop me. Whereas I think a lot of people get into business because they think they're going to make money from it, right? Or they think, oh, this will, and they do like, maybe they do a copycat business, just like we were talking about, where it's like, oh, this guy's doing it. You're not going to have the stuff inside you to keep getting past those obstacles and those end bad guys at the end of each level, right? Like it's gonna beat you down and you're gonna give up if you don't have this thing we're talking about. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I have in the book, you don't deserve to go to the next level until you beat the current one. But a lot of people, especially in today's society, there's a level of entitlement. It's like they haven't delivered, but, I should continue to, I deserve this, I deserve that. And actually, going back to that book real quick, the one thing I remember, because I read that Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill when I was 23 years old. But I've been repeating that mantra. You mentioned desire and faith. So the acronym in that book that I repeat to myself every morning, this might be helpful for everyone, is desire, faith, plan, action, consistency. So DFPAC, right? However you want to define it. But yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I feel like from that book where I got the most value. But anyway, that's a tangent, but I just want to give that.
No, I'm writing that down. That's why I may not have reacted as positively as because I was taking notes on the show. I love that. And I totally agree. And no, that's a good tangent. Desire, faith, plan, action, consistency, right? Was the last one.
Yep.
That's what's up. Yeah. I mean, and you got to have those things. And so bottom line is to have that. Being an entrepreneur and starting your own business is the hardest thing ever. Anybody tells you it's easy is full of it, right? Maybe one out of a billion people will be that Instagram guy that got famous like overnight, right? But you got to have the right stuff in place to keep that. And you see that all the time. Like people they get big or they have like a viral thing, but then they don't parlay that into anything because it's like you have to actually have gone through the steps and it's a compounding process. It doesn't happen overnight where you learn how to navigate life, how to navigate these worlds and these demons and these whatever you're slaying, right? And you're not going to be able to beat the harder one when you get to it if you couldn't even beat that easier bad guy. And it's a process, and people think that, like you said, it is total, this entitlement. Like we were talking about earlier, like this 15-second attention span. People just want it. It's an instant society. They just want it right now. And it's like, why can't I have it? And it's like, no, you're going to have that discipline, and you're going to have to put that hard work. But the good news is there's a way to, do that if you can kind of focus, if you have the right thing that you're focusing on that ties in with your passions and your strengths. And, you've got these systems in place to sort of gamify it and get through the tough times, then it becomes a game and it becomes fun.
Yeah, I'll just experience share for a second, kind of related to that note, because, sometimes it's better than advice, and you guys can interpret it however you want to interpret it. But when I first took over Single Ring, the ad agency, I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't build rapport with people, shut down the office, did all these crazy things, made sweeping changes. We actually dropped all the way down to one employee in a year after taking over the company. And my outside accounting firm said, hey, it might be time to shut the company down. And so, throughout that, I could have given up like a billion times, but sometimes it's having that pig-headedness or stubbornness to power through and go get through those failures. And you can either, keep going or decide to give up. But thankfully, it worked out because of the amazing team. But yeah, it almost all went to poo-poo. So,
yeah, right. And like you said, I mean, it was that sort of, again, going back to Napoleon Hill, for lack of a better term, desire backed by faith that you had in you. And you're like, I just know that this is going to work. And that's the same with me. I ended up starting and growing a restaurant delivery service company, similar to like a Grubhub or a DoorDash or an Uber Eats, but we actually started way before all those guys. We bootstrapped it, me and my partners. Like we didn't raise any money. We did it ourselves, and we grew. And fortunately we got in before all the big guys, and then we ended up getting bought out in the end. But I mean, it was a 10-year battle of just, I remember the very first restaurant we ever walked into, we almost got thrown out. The guy was like, wait, you want to take and we're like, okay, so this is what we do. Okay. We're going to market you guys, and let everybody know you exist that might not have known. And if they want to get delivery, we've got drivers, and they'll order right there online with us, and they'll pick up the order. This is like back in 2006, 2007.
Wow. Okay. Way before. Yeah.
2007, 2008. Actually, yeah. It was right after. It was right after the basically crash, kind of in the middle, when the stock market and the real estate market crashed. And we're like, okay, so we're gonna help you, and we're gonna and he's like, wait, let me get this straight. You want me to give you a commission off of my food, and you're gonna take my food out of my restaurant, my baby. You're gonna take my baby, and I don't know where it's gonna go. I don't know how you guys are gonna handle it. Get the hell out of my restaurant, right? This was like our first or second meeting, and that was so demoralizing because I remember thinking, well, we need to sign up a minimum of 20 restaurants. I felt like I want to get going back. This was when it was just pizza and Chinese was all you could get for delivery. Yeah. It's people don't even remember. It's hard for people to even fathom. It's like, that. Oh yeah, it was only like 13. Let's see, 13 years ago, really. And so, we had to introduce this concept not only to our customers, but to these restaurants, and basically try to make money doing it and getting a commission from them. And it was such an uphill battle because I remember thinking we got to have Chinese, and we got to have Pan Asian, and we got to have, salads. And like, I'm like, how are we going to get these restaurants? And it sucked. And we got so many no's, but we started slowly but surely building up, and we got a few little restaurants. And then we got like this one restaurant called Mellow Mushroom, and they just exploded, and all of a sudden people were talking about it, and that's how it goes, right? But we got kicked in the teeth so many times and could have just quit anytime. And I remember thinking, what am I doing here, right? But I knew, no, deep down, just like you were talking about, is like there was something where I knew it was worth it, and the juice was worth the squeeze, and we just kept going.
Once you get a taste of that freedom, you never want to let go. So.
Well, that's right. There's that old adage about entrepreneurs. What do they say? Like an entrepreneur.
The entrepreneurs they'll work 80 hours a week to prevent themselves from stop working 40 hours. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because it's that freedom of I'm creating this. And then when you do, so we got acquired in 2019. When you do get that hit, holy cow, there's no feeling like it on the planet. But here's the thing, people. It doesn't last. And life is a game, and there is no end. There is no end in terms of like, okay, if I could just get to this level, then I can just sit on a beach and drink a pina colada and everything will be hunky-dory. That doesn't exist. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's also boring too.
It's boring because as human beings, we need to constantly be growing and be stimulated. And so there's only so long that you can sit on a beach or play golf and not actually be growing in these areas of your life. And I found that very quickly. I did take about a month off because it was like a 10-year journey. I felt like an anchor was just taken off of my shoulders. And when we finally exited, I was like, oh my God. But then, after about, 2-3 weeks, I started getting antsy, and I knew I wanted to do something in this realm. But that's when I just went all in, and I was like, this is it. This is the next thing. And it's about gamifying it. And so I had that idea, going on, and I started my app. It was about 2.5 years, and awesome. I just have never looked back, and my app is close to being done. Mm-hmm. And I too have a book that I've been working on. I started mine way back in college when I was suicidal, when I read that very first How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it's just kind of been on the side, and I work on it here and there. It's like 1,000 pages. I'm like, okay, nobody's going to read that for the reasons we talked about earlier, so I need to get this down to something. But in the meantime, I'm focusing on what I think is really going to get through to people, which is like the social media, the app, and just more fun. Like I was on your social media page. I love the videos you do. That to me is like the epitome of gamifying self-help and personal development, where it's like same thing I'm trying to do, which is you have these elements of like gaming, like and images and stuff, and you're talking about certain concepts, and you're connecting your brain to both of the things, so that you the idea is you're getting those dopamine hits by doing good versus just getting a shallow reward of getting some coins or getting to the next level.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, I think there's levels to all of this. It's, there's levels to growing your audience. There's levels to, starting a business. Maybe you have to start out with a career first to make some money, and then you can go all the way up into building a SpaceX if you want. But yeah, I mean, we're all just trying to figure it out.
That's right. So speaking of, do you want to tell us a little bit about your book in terms of, I mean, obviously we've talked about the concepts of gaming in general and leveling up your life, but do you want to get into a little bit more specific on kind of your process or your system?
Yeah, I mean, it's so the book in itself, I mean, that's kind of just a philosophy, right? It's building the right habits and looking at life as a game. And if you want to go beyond that, that's fine, right? Like you can build great habits and work somewhere for the rest of your life if you want to do that. But we talk about the concept of the wealth ladder in the book as well, which is from my friend Nathan Barry, who has a company called ConvertKit. And you know, earlier in your career, you might start as an intern somewhere, then you might start working somewhere full time. Then you might take on some project work on the side. Then that might become an agency, and then maybe you can take the profits from that and go build out a products business or buy a products business, and then you can go all the way up into building like a network effects business, right? But the whole idea here is that you're constantly leveling up, and you can't just say, oh, you know, look, you know, this guy is so great. I mean, he's a billionaire, but like that's overwhelming because they've been doing that for 30, 40, 50 years. And you got to think of it like one step at a time, one level at a time. And that's how we look at business too. And business is very much it's my canvas for proving out the whole leveling up philosophy, because business is my game now. And I'm going to show you how I do it openly. We're actually just started even publishing, like we have our business unit leaders publishing all the numbers, right, every month for our entire team to see. And we're going to start making that public in about 6 to 7 months or so. But yeah, it's all just a game. And
what's the name of the company?
So we have multiple businesses. I buy other businesses, but Leveling Up is the entire kind of holding company.
Got it. Yep. No, I love that. That's, yeah. So people can see in real time, and right. People need that type of stuff. I love it, man. So is there anything else that you want to share about, you know, I guess we've talked about kind of your journey to get here, the concept of, you know, what you're doing, how you're helping people and hopefully the world, you know, so where's your next level? You know, what's the next step, and where, you know, what is your short and long-term goal here with this stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, you know, I was talking to my coach about this yesterday, but my long-term goal is to just continue to be the guide. It's to help people become, to your point, become the best version of themselves. And what I would say right now, what I'm super excited about, what I'm focused on right now, just really two things. It's buying other businesses, and beyond that, we have this NFT project coming out with called Leveling Up Heroes. And so our goal long-term is to develop those characters. And so that philosophy lives on beyond me, right? So, you know, I'm not going to go get too technical here, but in the world of blockchain right now, you have the concept of DAOs. Really recommend everyone look into that. Decentralized autonomous organizations, and then the NFTs, where we're going to provide special access for people too. So it's a really exciting time, and it's going to give people a chance to kind of basically buy equity in however strong I'm able to make the Leveling Up brand. If it fails, it fails. But if it gets really big, then great. Those NFTs are going to be worth a lot of money for them in the future. So yeah, just really those two things that I'm focused on right now.
I love that. So yeah, let's, if you're open to it, I'd like to talk offline with you as well about a few things. So I'll shoot you, we'll communicate outside on DMs and get your info. Thank you so much for being on the show. I like to end each show. You mentioned, it's funny, we've talked, usually gamification and habits to me go hand in hand. I've mentioned them briefly. You've mentioned them. I know you said in your book, it sounded like it's a big part of your book. To me, habits are everything. We are habits. Our habits are us. And, you know, it ties into gamification in a way, because it's sort of like your brain is wired. You start doing certain things. You don't even realize you're doing it. They become automatic. And a lot of these things, you know, I call them failure versus success habits. The failure habits are hurting you. They're hurting your momentum, your happiness. And the idea is you want to replace those with these success habits in these major areas of your life. So can you give me an example of maybe a failure habit that you once had? You know, you gave us your backstory, but that you at some point realized this is doing me no good, and you were able to consciously become aware of it and replace it with a success habit?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about so in poker, in college, I would play about 12 to 16 hours of poker a day and just not go to class. And I would oftentimes blame, in the very beginning, I was like 17 or 18 years old. When I would go on a losing streak for months and months, I'd find anything to blame besides myself and not taking responsibility for myself. So I blame the dealers. I blame the person sitting next to me for smelling. I don't know, right? But at the end of the day, no one's going to come save you. It's really only one person. You got to take responsibility for yourself, and that's what I learned at that age. So that would be one example.
I love that. Yeah. And to me, that ties into one of my biggest concepts. I call it a fixed victim versus a growth owner. I feel like we're all born growth owners, and that it's like the world is at our oyster. Like, let's go naked and ready to, and it's like, I can do this. And then it's all about playing and having fun. And you just want to squeeze every drop out of every day.
Right.
And then you hit your pillow and, it's a net. But then the world starts to get in the way, just like we were talking about school and parents and the system and all these things that, are kind of out of our control. But then we start developing our identity from and our habits from. And, this fixed victim idea is like sort of like that idea of, I was born the way I am. There's not really much I can do about it. My brain is the way it is. And, I'm just going to do the best I can. And maybe, who knows, maybe one day I'll get lucky and hit the lottery, right? Versus a growth owner that says, all right, I got everything within me to kick ass, take names. I am going to become an unstoppable force. I'm going to give fear the finger. I am going to treat obstacles as temporary roadblocks, and I'm going to figure out how to pivot around. And one way or another, I am going to get to that next level, to that finish line. And to me, that's kind of everything. Like, if you can develop, and that's your attitude, and that ties into the mindset core that I talk about, which is these 5 cores. And it's like, if you can get your perception of the world and the perception of yourself, your attitude, your confidence, to where, going back to what we were saying before of like, just, I know that I can do it and I'm going to do it, and hell or high water, I'm going to push through and get there. Like, that's everything. But if you don't have that, that's also everything.
Right. No, completely agree. I mean, final thing I'll say is your attitude determines your altitude, right? So.
Love that. Dude, Eric, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure. Wonderful talking to a fellow gamifier, I should say. There's not really a term. We need to make it. Let's work together. Like, where it's like I said, a movement of where everybody just automatically knows, oh yeah, he gamified his life, right? I mean, that's what I call it. And maybe that isn't, but do you have a term that you're trying to, obviously level up, but like just become synonymous with sort of looking at life like a video game?
I mean, we call them gamers or life gamers, leveling up.
Yeah, I like that.
And so, yeah.
Life gamers, right? Life's a game. Play it. Who said that?
I don't remember.
I don't either off the top of my head, but it's a good quote. It's helping you in. Life's a game. Play it. All right, man. Well, I'm going to reach out to you separately. And if you have time to chat right now, I actually may hop on a call with you because I want to continue.
Yeah, hit me. I actually have to run right now, but hit me on DM and then we can keep talking. Yeah. Cool.
Love it.
All right.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
That's it for the 5 Core Life. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button on this video and pound that subscribe button so you get notified when new episodes drop. Also, please fill out the free 5 Core Life Evaluator quiz. It's a great way to get a baseline of where you are in the 5 cores and which of the 5 cores you need support. In addition, you'll get some actionable advice that you can apply and start improving your life in the areas that you need it most. That's it for today's episode of the 5 Core Life Podcast. Have a wonderful day.
Get moving. Gain momentum. Join the movement. Join Emmett by going to moremomentum.com to take a free life evaluator quiz on where you currently stand in each of your 5 cores.